Hi guys, welcome back to Just Talking, where I talk at you and you sometimes listen. So today we're doing the history of Nickelodeon Land and Beaver Creek, including some of the rides that were in there and the future of the area. And of course, if this video taught you anything or you just enjoyed yourself, make sure to like, comment and subscribe, and let's get into the video. So, what is Nickelodeon Land? Well, Nickelodeon Land is a children's section of Blackpool Pleasure Beach which features 12 rides, 5 of which were repurposed from its predecessor, Beaver Creek. And of course, there is 2 wooden roller coasters in this area, but mainly it's made up by flat rides and small family attractions. So it opened on 4th of May 2011 after the announcement of its placement on September 5th, 2010. Of course, most of the construction that took place was on things like the Nickelodeon shop, and also rechanging the facades for the rides, repainting them, and also adding some of the newer flat rides in, which was actually one of the last things that they did. They wanted to make sure the theming was going in first, even though there isn't very much of it. So in the area there are 2 food outlets, the Snack Shack, which you can see just in this corner here, and Big Pizza. Big Pizza was actually located where it is before in Beaver Creek, but of course before that the Creator building was a lot bigger than it was now, because of course they had to change it to fit in with the new show area, which basically is where you can either have a green screen photo or a character photo with any of the Nickelodeon characters that are available, which is from Paw Patrol, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, SpongeBob, and I believe there's one more, but I'm not exactly too sure with that because I'm not exactly an avid fan of Nickelodeon. So the IP, which is basically an agreement that Nickelodeon set out with the Pleasure Beach back in 2010 so that they could control everything that happens in the area, is set to come to an end soon. Basically this year actually. It was a 10-year deal so that Nickelodeon could control everything that goes on in this area, which is why it hasn't changed because of course Nickelodeon is a American company, so it's not exactly focusing too much on what goes on in its British enterprises too much. But the future is basically unknown. Whether or not they'll renew it for another 10 years, or maybe renew it for a few years when they decide what to do with it. And I will talk about the future in a minute. It also partakes in 2 events annually. The new Nick or Treat event, where kids can go in fancy dress, and also adults. So then they can go trick-or-treating, get some sweets, and if you're an adult you can actually pick up a free cocktail as well. So that's a really nice new event that they have where you can meet all the characters. And also the Christmas Grotto, which is by the show building in the park, and that's basically where kids can go and get a present from Santa, see the favourite Nickelodeon characters, and walk through a scenic area. So for what was Beaver Creek when it was opened, its opening isn't specifically known, but it was the first family area at the park that was specifically dedicated to families, even though the whole park was initially dedicated to families and people coming to the seaside. Of course, it was never an area dedicated to specifically the younger side of their audience. The area closed shortly after the announcement on the 5th of September that Amanda Thompson made that stated that basically Beaver Creek would close and construction would begin for the new Nickelodeon Land area. And there was a lot of hype around it, a lot of different press events, and there was also a lot of deals on tickets to get people into the park. And there still is a lot of deals for Nickelodeon Land, and a lot of people do still come just for it. So it's themed to the characters Bradley and Bella Beaver, which at the time were pretty primary mascots for the park, other than Mr. Funshine, and their woodland fairy tale friends. Of course, Bradley and Bella Beaver used to be walk-around characters that you'd see day in, day out, and basically they had this full area dedicated to them, and all the rides were themed around their adventures with their friends. And basically, one of the aims of the area was to stimulate imagination within kids, whilst giving elements of education. You can still find the Beaver's Garden near the area Nickelodeon Land, just nestled by the pathway leading down to Avalanche. And basically there isn't really anything there, but there's a few educational signs in that area. But that is still up, and it could be expanded, and their area could be brought back, which I'll talk about in a minute. That's just a little tease. So the main feature of the area was the large statue of Gulliver from Gulliver's Adventures, and he held up the monorail track. The monorail actually opened in 1966 and was the first UK commercial monorail, even though one opened at Butlins a year prior to it, and it shut in 2012. Some of the track you can actually see still because it does hold quite a lot of the electrical circuits for Nickelodeon Land, and of course Nickelodeon Land opened before its closure, so they didn't really foresee that it was going to close too much. So for some of the rides in Nickelodeon Land, you of course have Blue Flyer. That opened in 1934 as a wooden roller coaster and was known as Zipper Dipper in Beaver Creek, and it was renamed and repainted in 2011. It was originally in white colours, now it's themed to blue, and isn't specifically tied with any sort of franchise from Nickelodeon. There is also Avatar Airbender, which opened in 2011, and that's a disco coaster. And of course, that's themed to the anime Avatar, which is very popular on Nickelodeon. We also have Dora's World Voyage, which is a sort of water captive boat ride, and that opened in 2011, and it takes kids around the world where Dora teaches them parts about their language, their culture, and some of the wildlife there. So that's an educational boat ride. There's Rugrats Lost River, which was renamed in 2011 after being called Beaver Creek's Log Flume, and of course that's themed over the Rugrats cartoon and also the Rugrats movie. I do actually prefer this Log Flume. It's better themed and it's got really nice wildlife, which I believe is Canadian. I'm not too sure if that's true, but it does look like very Canadian wildlife with the moose in there as well. And of course you have Rugrats Lost River ride there with its very bare theming, but you do get very wet on this ride, so it's still a very impressive small log flume. There is also the Backyardigans Pirate Treasure, which was renamed in 2011 from Bradley's Pirate Ship ride, and of course that used to feature a larger pirate ship in the middle which had light up bulbs on it and along all of the sort of masts and sterns of the ship, but basically it's all the exact same apart from some of the theming around it. Nick Streak opened in 1933, renamed in 2011 to Nickelodeon Streak from Roller Coaster, and was repainted orange and also got some new trains with some new padding on the inside. There is also a few other flat rides in there, which I won't go into too much detail with, they're not very interesting. You have Rainforest Rescue, Order Up, Bikini Bottom Bus Tour, Fairy World Taxi Spin, SpongeBob Splash Bash, and Circus Bounce, and they all open in 2011, apart from Order Up, which was originally called, I believe, The Shoot, and that was in Beaver Creek as well. So for the things that were originally in Beaver Creek, you of course have Helicopters, which is a spinning helicopter ride for children. You have the Veteran Carousel, which opened sometime in the 90s, and that was renamed to Vintage Carousel and then to the Thompson Carousel, and that's now located under the chain lift of Avalanche. There is also the Lunar Carousel, and that was a space-themed carousel which I believe was enclosed, so I'm not too sure where exactly that was, but I believe it was in the Moon Crater building where Space Invader was, and I do have a history video on that too. There is also Magic Mountain, which was a themed dark ride, and it opened in 1934, so it was very old when it closed, and it was themed to fairy tales and global sites, so you'd see things from a lot of different countries, a bit like It's a Small World, but then you'd also see scenes from popular fairy tales and books that kids would recognise. There was Magnus's Mini Dodgems, which were smaller Dodgems than the ones that you find near Avalanche. Tetley Teacup Ride, which I thought I dreamed of until I actually started researching for this video, and it was removed in 2017, not 2019, sorry, after being renamed to its original name, Crazy Daisy, when it opened in the 90s. There was also Thor's Turnpike, which you can still find today, and that opened sometime in the 90s and has since been relocated to Avalanche right next to its queue line to be called Alpine Rally, and that's obviously near the Eddie Stobart ride too. So, for the future of the area, you of course have some tweets which hint to it returning back to Beaver Creek as the IP ends. Of course, I don't blame the Pleasure Beach for slightly wanting to change things. I've already done a video on this, but I really can't blame them for wanting control back of that area because they could develop it so much more. And of course, here you can see that the return of Bradley and Bella Beaver is obviously back. They've brought the mascots back out, and every time I've been to the park, they've been dancing outside as it opens, And of course here it says Bradley Beaver at Pleasure Beach with Tuesday. We may bring him back someday soon. Watch this space, which obviously hints to something happening to do with the mascots. And I really do hope that they make some changes, whether or not it's maybe reducing the amount of dominance Nickelodeon has over the area, or something like that, making a new agreement. I'm not too sure, but I wouldn't be too bothered if Beaver Creek came back. I do quite like the idea of having a nature-themed area with a lot of fairy tale things, and a new dark ride could never hurt. And the Dora's World Voyage ride isn't the most impressive, nor are any Nickelodeon lands really in the rest of the globe, in fact. So there's no real loss with it, but I would definitely like to see some things come back with these two characters. They are very well designed, they are quite charming, but it may just be a bit of merchandise for them as a nostalgia trip. We just don't know at this point. So there is another alternative, which could be that SpongeBob gets a new ride. It would be quite nice if at the end of the IP they basically said, we have proposals for Beaver Creek coming back, which a lot of people would want to go to, and then show them the revenue that Nickelodeon Land pulls in, which is very high. Loads of families come to the park every year, adults go in. There's a big target audience for Nickelodeon, and loads of people love it, whether it's from their childhood, because obviously there's Rugrats and SpongeBob, or the newer generation with Paw Patrol. So they might just say, hey, we've got these other ideas, it's fine, we'll leave, but look at all that money, we could make him another ride, we could get a new ride in. There's not really that much space for it, in all honesty, but if they maybe repurposed the Moon Crater building where Space Invader was, they could maybe have another indoor coaster, because, you know, they're very popular at the minute. Loads of people want them back. There's not very many available. Apart from really Space Mountain over in America, there isn't very many indoor coasters, or Vogel Rocket Efteling. So I think that could be a good investment to bring something like that back. But yeah, I'd really like to see some of your opinions in the comments on whether or not you'd like Nickelodeon Land to leave, if you're not too bothered, or if you desperately want Beaver Creek to come back. And let's get into the outro. That's really it for today's video, and I've really enjoyed making this video. I really like making history videos. Of course, there is a full playlist of now 13 videos of history at Blackpool Pleasure Beach. So of course, if you do want to find out more things about the park, make sure to look through that. And yeah, if you did enjoy this, make sure to like, comment and subscribe. And yeah, this is Just Talking. Bye bye.